Hey guys, it's Bina, and in today's video, I want to go over your first steps in Last Epoch. This is going to be great if you're a newer player coming into the game, knowing what to expect and how to get into it in a proper way. So let's get started right away. First of all, you must know that there's two modes in Last Epoch. One is online and one is offline. Currently, offline still requires an internet connection, but for 1.0, offline will be completely offline experience, so you'll be able to play even if you don't have any internet connection. Online play is server authoritative, so basically just as any other ARPG on the market right now as a live service like Diablo, like Path of Exile, like you will require an internet connection, and then you can have some interaction with others as well and play with others. So that's the first choice you have to make. Do you want to play online or do you want to play offline? Second choice, do you want to play standard or do you want to play hardcore? Also, there's a couple of challenge modes where you can play character found, you can play account found. Keep in mind, all of these challenges, you can always opt out of them. So if you start a character in solo character found, you could decide, okay, I don't want to play character found anymore. I want to bring my character to my regular standard realm. So you just opt out of it in the settings. You log onto your character. In the menu settings, you will have an option to opt out of it and then go back to standard with that character, with all of his item, but your stash will stay in your solo character found, right? So your stash. Next, let's talk about the classes. With the mage, your classic spellcaster. There's also this, he can go into the sorcerer, which has the skill meteor. He can go into the spellblade, which has basically, it's a melee mage, basically with swords usually. Dual wielding mage that does melee attacks, that does elemental damage. Very strong, one of the best DPS in the game actually. And then you have the rune master, which is essentially the invoker, kind of like you cast spells and then you accumulate runes, and then depending on the order of these runes, you cast a different spell with your runic invocation. So this can be pretty fun. You've got the sentinel. Sentinel is your classic sword and board character, which is basically a knight of swords. It can go into a paladin, it can go into a void knight, it can go into a forge guard. So each of these having their own strength and weaknesses, but it's your classic sword and board character. You have the acolyte, which can go basically your summoner, your mage of death and destruction. You can go into a lich, which gives you a second life and you get a transformation. You can go into the necromancer, which basically is your summoner, skeletons, wraiths, and stuff like that. And then you can go also into the new warlock, which is upcoming, which is all about curses. You then have the primalist. Primalist is your he is very, very in tune with nature. There's going to be the Beastmaster, which has companions and is basically your minion playstyle. There is also the Druid, which has the transformations. So he can transform into a Spriggan. He can transform into a Swarmblade, which is essentially a Kha'Zix, if you know from League of Legends. Kind of like a bug. And he can also transform into a Werebear, which he rampages and he goes across the battlefield on all fours. So this is going to be your primalist. And then you have the rogue. So the rogue is the last class we're going to talk about. He has also 3 masteries. One is the blade dancer, which is essentially all about melee attacks, kind of like being a ninja. Then you have the marksman, which is your classic bow character from any ARPG. And then you have also the falconer, which is a new twist on coming up for 1.0, which is you have a falcon following you, which is an invulnerable minion, and you have multiple different skills in relation to this. Keep in mind that you cannot respec your mastery choice, so pick very carefully. If not, you'll have to reroll. But for everything else in the game, you can very, very easily respec, so don't worry about it too much. Right, so first you'll start and you're gonna do the campaign. In the campaign, there are 9 chapters. So all of these chapters, there are ways to skip some of them and go into the endgame first, which is the Monolith of Faith, which is basically your mapping system. But I heavily suggest any new player coming in to just go through the campaign and then after the campaign, go into Monolith. So that is pretty straightforward, just like any other game in its genre. Next, let's talk about leveling up. In this game, you level up your character, you level up your skills. Both are each independent of each other, but they use the same experience from you killing monsters. So as you get more powerful, you get passive points that you can invest into your passive tree. And then there's also the skill experience that you can invest into the transformative skill trees that are available for each and every single one of the skills in Last Epoch. This is how you decide how you want to make your character, how you want to build. Do I want to build Fireball as fire? Do I want to build Fireball as a flamethrower? Do I want to build it as like a plasma thrower? There's many different options for many different skills, so I'll let you guys explore some of that. Next up, let's talk about the gearing and the blessing. So this is going to be all about loot. So items in Last Epoch, most items can have up to 4 affixes on them. So 2 prefixes and 2 suffixes. Prefixes are used mainly for offensive stats, and suffixes are used mainly for defensive stats. So this is the basics of how gear works in the game, and pretty much everything is balanced around this. There are some exceptions for sure, but let's go into the simple things for now for this introductory video. You have common items, magic, rares, exalted items, and then set and unique items, and then legendary items. So common, magic, and rare, I can put them all in the same category. This is your first set of gear that you unlock. This is what you find very easily during the campaign, and then you craft on your gear to put more affixes onto them, but we'll talk about the crafting a little bit later. But then this is all your basic set of gear: common, magic, and rare. So common items have no affixes on them, magic have up to 2, and rares have up to 4 affixes to up to tier 5. Then you have exalted items. Exalted items have tier 6 and tier 7 affixes on them. So a tier 7 usually is about double the value of a tier 5. So this makes these items very, very powerful, and these are the ones that you will strive to obtain in the end game. Then you have set items, which are basically just like any other in any other game. You equip a couple of them, and then they give you a certain bonus based on the number of pieces that you have equipped. And then you have unique items. Unique items have a specific set of affixes, special effects. They're pretty cool. They're more rare. You don't get them as often as you find rare, for example. So these are classic unique items, just like from any RPG. Then you have legendary items. To put it simple, legendary items are uniques that have a couple of stats from an exalted imprinted onto it. So it's basically almost 2 items into one. So you can have all of the stats from the unique, and then a couple of stats, or even all of the stats from an exalted on one single item. Recently, there was also the addition of Weaver's Will items. Weaver's Will are items that just level up along with you and gain affixes as you level up, and the item level up as well. Now let's talk about idols. Idols, if you've played Diablo 2, idols are kind of like charms. So they have their own separate window. They have their own separate gear window, which you can put them in. So they don't take space in your inventory, but they give you bonuses, like kind of passive bonuses. They are very much like another piece of gear that gives you stats, whether it be offensive or defensive or having special effects. Now let's talk about blessings. Blessings can do one of 2 things. 1, either increase your character's power, or 2, increase your drop rates or experience rate, right? So these are permanent buffs that you get into the end game when you do the Monolith of Faith and you kill certain timeline bosses. You have a choice of a blessing, and then you can farm these to have even higher rolls on each one of these. So this is a big part of the end game system as well. Now let's talk about crafting. Crafting in Last Epoch is incredible. It's one of the best aspects of the entire game. Super deterministic system. You just grab your item, put it in your forge, which you can access with F, and then you just use affix shards to imprint exactly the affix that you want on the gear. So it makes it very easy to have a starter version of a perfect item, like the perfect affixes that you want on the item, and then you strive to get higher and higher tiers on it, and then you find exalted items to get even higher than tier 5. Because you can only craft up until tier 5. Tier 6 and 7 exalted items can only be dropped. So this is the simplistic version of crafting. You can do many other things, but for that's going to be into another topic for another video. I'll have the link below for my crafting guide. So now let's talk about the end game of Last Epoch. There's the Monolith of Faith, which is essentially the main end game system, which is your mapping system, and it's infinitely scaling in difficulty. And this is where you farm your blessings and you spend most of your time. There's also dungeons. Dungeons are their own little thing, which they have their own little mechanic, and this is where you can actually craft your legendary items. And then there's also the arena, which is another infinitely scaling endgame system, which is basically waves and waves and waves of monster coming at you, and then it gets increasingly difficult, and then you must compete to secure your spot on the leaderboards and claim rank 1 or whatever rank you set your goal to. Now, that pretty much sums it up for this introduction to Last Epoch, guys. I hope you learned something today. I hope you enjoyed these videos. And if you want to support me, Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys all in the next video.